Welcome to Audiorama on Delectora. Make yourself comfortable, listen, and enjoy this audiobook. Right Thinking. Henry Thomas Hamblin.
Right Thinking. Henry Thomas Hamblin. Preface. To think correctly, in an elementary, broad and general sense, is to have positive thoughts instead of negative ones. It means to harbor thoughts of success instead of failure, of health instead of sickness, of love instead of hate, of good humor instead of melancholy, of optimism instead of pessimism, of abundance instead of poverty, of triumph instead of defeat, of freedom instead of limitation, and so on. Whoever does so will change inwardly. As he changes inwardly, his actions will also change, which, in turn, will transform his life and circumstances. Consequently, as soon as right thinking replaces wrong thinking, the character or personality also changes, in a favorable sense, which influences the improvement of life and circumstances. Hence the scriptures express the truth, by recommending, transform yourselves by the renewing of your mind. Right thinking, however, in a higher sense, is something even superior to all that has been said. It is thinking in a much higher state of consciousness, and from a point of view entirely new to the individual. It means to think from the point of view of the universal mind, replacing your weak, limited and finite mind. It means to think, with the conviction and awareness that love is reality, that perfection is reality, that health is reality, and that harmony is reality. It means to free ourselves, in thought, from the slavery of the senses and the tyranny of desire. It means to live life in a higher octave, on an entirely higher plane. In other words, that it is possible to transcend the limitations of time and the senses, to penetrate into the consciousness of eternal life and being, to think with God, as he thinks, not in the finite human way, instead of against God. To think correctly is also to think and live with the awareness that all is well. It is to know, in our very soul, that God's procedures are perfect, that he does not make mistakes, that everything works together, towards the complete realization of the divine purpose. To think correctly is also to know that perfection exists, in reality, now, and to act in the conviction of such knowledge. It should not be believed, however, that by penetrating into this higher consciousness we become omniscient, for this is far from being true, but it does give us the revelation of what Jesus expressed, in speaking of the truth which we were to attain, and which would set us free. The difference between thinking on the lower plane of the senses of mind, and thinking on the higher plane of universal mind, is perfectly described in Isaiah, chapter 55, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways." Therefore, to think with God, which is the aspiration of every seeker after truth, it is necessary to rise far above the ordinary plane of human thought, to think in a totally higher consciousness. When man is ready for change, God invites him to do so. In the same chapter we read, "Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him turn to the Lord, who will have mercy on him, and to our God, who will abundantly pardon him." The possibility of attaining the cosmic or universal mind is amply demonstrated by human experience, and in the New Testament. It is perfectly evident that Jesus, the Christ, was able to rise at will, into the superconscious realm of the universal mind. His teachings come, for the most part, directly from the cosmic mind, therefore, they are comprehensible only when this fact is admitted and understood. It is undoubtedly possible for him to rise and reach the higher mind of God. From this higher plane or octave all healing proceeds. In this superconscious realm, truth can be understood in such a way as to set us free. Right thinking is the very opposite of impracticable dreams or mystic ecstasy, and it is intensely practical. I can say, as a practical businessman who began life penniless, and who had to sustain a rough and tumble struggle with the difficulties and realities of life for many years, that there is nothing so useful in practice as right thinking. Having had to make my way in life, from a very early age, without money, influence or education, and further hindered by delicate health, I am not interested in anything that has no practical application. Before I accept anything, I have to experience its practical and ultimate usefulness. The higher consequences of this higher and righteous thinking in harmony with God are described in poetic and symbolic language by the inspired prophet, who in turn speaks from the standpoint of the universal mind. Isaiah says, "For with joy shall ye go forth, and with peace shall ye be led forth. The mountains and the hills shall lift up their song before you, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the brier shall the fir tree grow, and instead of the nettle shall the myrtle grow, and it shall be in the name of the Lord, and for an everlasting sign that shall not be blotted out." It has been demonstrated, in practical experience, that all the above promises are pure truth. Those who learn the art and science of right thinking discover, in time, that the thorns of failure, fear, discord, hatred, disease, unhappiness and needless suffering, give way to true success, achievement, harmony, love, happiness and health. The words of the prophet expressed in plain and simple language, clearly demonstrate that those who think and act in harmony with God, rather than against Him, enjoy here and now, in this life, harmony, peace, health, happiness and bliss. Introduction. This book presents a philosophy of joy. A philosophy that gives man a message of joy and happiness, and tries to spread it to thousands. It says that if you are not overflowing with joy, there must be a reason for it, because joy, happiness, health and delight, in the mere act of living, belong to man by birthright and as a normal condition. If you are unhappy, you are ill or depressed, in an abnormal state, your mind is diseased and needs a physician. The science of right thinking, with its message of joy, tries to show you where you are wrong, to help you get back on the right track. This philosophy is giving repeated proof that man can, by a flash of inspiration, awaken from his miserable hypnotic sleep of depression and disease, and find again the joy of living, the perfect health which has been unknown to him for so long. This philosophy of right thinking is, therefore, a gospel of joy, joy and still more joy, and the joyful laughter of the awakened soul. And it is much more, as will be demonstrated in the pages that follow. It brings with it a new concept of life. It teaches that life is spiritual, that we cannot separate matter from spirit. Carlyle once said that matter could only exist spiritually, and consequently, man exists spiritually or he does not exist. Indeed, man is a spirit, the physical body is but its material and external manifestation. If life is spiritual, then man can attain true triumph through spiritual forces, he can enjoy health through spiritual forces, he can attain and achieve it through spiritual forces, he can be happy through spiritual forces, and he can love through spiritual forces. Therefore, the true art of living is the development, training and utilization of spiritual powers. There is no method of education that achieves this, it will never be achieved by objective means, and can only be achieved through a subjective process. Spiritualized right thinking awakens and exercises the inner powers of man, so that he can achieve success in life, create harmony in his home, health in his body, and by his joy and optimism, bring splendor and joy to all his fellow men. In addition, it will allow him to discover and unfold in himself the spark of divinity that has remained hidden for so long. The science and art of right thinking are equally practical. A great truth has been taken, and leaving aside all non-essentials, a practical system has been forged, which can be accurately applied to all the problems of life. It has found that life is a result, an effect, and that reality and cause are within. It teaches that life responds to certain laws, and that by working in harmony with these laws, results are obtained with mathematical accuracy. It dispels the vagueness, mystery and uncertainty that surround so many teachings, and shows that life can be directed by scientific methods. It teaches that the universe does not move at whim, but according to immutable laws. What a man sows, that shall he reap, and as a man thinks in his heart so is he, are scientific truths demonstrated. As man can direct lightning, move his streetcars and machinery by means of electricity, and illuminate his streets and houses, so he can, when he understands the laws which govern his life, produce results no less admirable, which can be predicted with the same certainty, because they are the effects of certain causes. Man need no longer be the plaything of fate, or the victim of circumstances, trying to tread the mysterious path of life in the dark, luck or unexercised intuition, when he can rely on knowledge and understanding. Now you can direct your life with accuracy and certainty, and in this knowledge is peace. The importance of right thinking is based on the fact that all that we are, and all that happens to us in life is, to a large extent, the result of our thoughts. It has been said that we are what we think and we think what we are. It was Buddha who said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought, it is founded on our thoughts, it is composed of our thoughts. The ancient Upanishad says, what a man thinks, that is what he becomes. James Allen wrote, your thoughts, desires and inspirations, make up your world, and to you, everything in the universe of beauty, joy and glory, or of ugliness and sadness and pain, is contained in yourselves. By your own thoughts you make or spoil your life, your world, your universe. If today our life is unhappy and disorderly, it is largely due to our wrong and disharmonious thoughts of the past, whose fruits we must now reap. Each disharmonious thought produces, with mathematical accuracy, a corresponding result. We cannot escape the effect of our thoughts, because they come to us with perfect precision. What man sows, that he will also reap, is written in letters of gold on the portals of eternity. This is so because the universe moves, not by whim, but by an exact, invariable law, which never fails. Therefore, if our life is disharmonious, it is simply due to the effect of our thoughts, for each one receives exactly the experience he needs. He who is busy feeling sorry for himself is wasting his energies, for whatever happens to him in life, is the precise consequence of his thought. But someone will exclaim, what about actions and sins? My answer is that actions and sins are simply the result of wrong thinking. If we think wrong, we express evil. If we allow our mind to harbor wrong thoughts, they will eventually produce bitter fruits. To think wrong is to think in disharmony with eternal truth. It is the cause of much ill health, want, restriction and misfortune, as well as of sin and evil deeds of various kinds. Some will say, well, if we cannot escape the consequences of our thoughts, we had better not try, in which case, where does your philosophy of joy go? The answer is that we can control our thoughts, as a result of our own training and discipline. Some will say that such a thing is impossible, that thought is so elusive that it cannot be mastered. Others will say, I cannot control my thoughts, if I could, would stop worrying. As it is, as soon as the slightest setback appears, I begin to worry and fear, and even though I know that in doing so I do no good, but rather harm, nevertheless, I cannot help it, I have a worrying character. This does not prove that thought cannot be controlled, it only proves that those who thus speak have not learned the scientific art of controlling thought. Thought can be controlled if pursued with perseverance, patience and persistence. Great changes such as this are not accomplished in a day, but can be achieved over time, by a systematic practice of the right principles. Admitting then, that it is possible to control thoughts, let us consider the results to be obtained from the practice of right thinking. First, instead of thinking destructively, one will think constructively. Instead of demolishing life and heaping up worries for the future, life and character will be formed in beauty and harmony. Instead of creating disharmony, a hostile environment, failure, ill health, sickness and misfortune, the tendency in the future will be to change such things into success, health, happiness, peace and joy. Second, the powerful vibrations of constructive thinking, that is, thinking in harmony with the infinite, divine and universal mind, will gradually change character and transform life. Harmony will be restored by thinking in accordance with eternal truth. The infinitely good vital force, which is the life of God immanent in man, can manifest in consciousness, in the form of good, that is, in health, harmony, fulfillment through service, efficiency and sufficiency. Life is not stripped of its discipline, but of its disharmonies and unnecessary suffering. Right thinking, that is, thinking in accordance with truth, restores harmony, which is the normal condition. Good is a positive, not a negative condition. Unfortunately, most people's idea of good is entirely negative. For them, the good is simply the absence of evil. For example, their idea of health is the absence of disease. Happiness, for them, is the mere absence of misfortune. They do not know the overflowing joy inherent in good health, nor the sparkling joy of new life. God's life is perfect and, if allowed to flow unhindered, will only manifest itself in its beneficial aspect. Wrong thinking, erroneous beliefs, and the absence of truth divert the beneficent stream of God's perfect life into disharmonious channels, producing disease, extreme poverty, and other evils. Many unnecessarily fear the consequences of wrong thinking and of past evil deeds. They say, "It is my karma and I have to bear it." They become so saturated with this idea that they aggravate and increase their misfortunes. However, if they would accept the truth, understand, think and live in the consciousness of the truth, they would find that their troubles would be considerably alleviated, if not disappear altogether. It is useless to struggle against life, but by facing every difficulty with truth, thinking in harmony with truth, and living in the consciousness of truth, life is transformed, and all its difficulties become friends in disguise. Further, as the character changes, external influences and vibrations affect one less and less. Their power to harm us diminishes as we rise to higher vibrations. The effects of thought. The immediate effect of thought upon our body, spirit, work and happiness, and indeed upon all aspects of life, is so indisputable that it almost seems unnecessary to deal with it. But experience with students has convinced me that many do not realize the power that thought exerts on their actions and, consequently, on everything that is the result of their actions. It will not be superfluous, therefore, that we treat this question lightly. A thought, someone has said, is an action in the process of being born. Everything we do is the result of thoughts that we have harbored or held in our minds. We may do things on the impulse of the moment, but such an impulse is the result of a thought or thoughts, which we have previously held in mind. The subconscious mind is a center of extraordinary power and energy. It is a blind force and acts by suggestion. In other words, it acts by the impressions it receives from the objective mind. Therefore, the kind of action it produces in life depends on whether such impressions, thoughts or suggestions, are good or bad. The will and the moral sense must begin their defensive work with thoughts, and not with actions, because the former are the cause of the latter. Therefore, if one has thoughts of pessimism, they will express themselves in melancholy and failure. If they are thoughts of ill health, they will manifest themselves in disease and actual disorders in the body. If a young man says, "I fear I cannot perform a certain task," he will fail, but if on the contrary, he affirms to himself that he can perform it, then his subconscious mind will do all it can to help him to succeed, and unless he sets his mind on something beyond his degree of unfoldment, he will succeed. Good thoughts will produce good actions, and bad thoughts, bad actions. Therefore, it is in the control of thought that self-mastery will be found. All bad habits in life, as in the body, have their origin in bad habits of thought. The only way to form good habits is by constructive and positive thought, accompanied by corresponding and appropriate action. If on a rainy morning you say, "What a horrible morning," you will make it a horrible morning for yourself, and you will contribute to making it horrible for others, for not only do you send a suggestion of gloom and desolation to your own subconscious mind, but you extend it to all who hear you. On the other hand, if you adopt the attitude that the weather might be much worse, that the rain is very useful in the field, that the sun shines in all its splendor behind the clouds, and that God is in you, you will thereby subtract sadness from all that is perfect in the perfect world of the day, and you will feel blissful and happy, and by so acting you will make others happier, by the irradiation of your own bliss. In the same way, if you say to yourself in your inner self, "Today I feel very bad," your subconscious mind acts accordingly. The message is transmitted to all the millions of tiny, industrious workers, whose duty it is to repair, build and keep your body healthy, and they act accordingly. The whole system becomes depressed, vitality diminishes, the power of resistance weakens, so that the body becomes easy prey to the first infection that appears. On the other hand, if, when you do not feel very much in your center, you breathe deeply, and when you inhale you say, "Infinite is my health," and you keep in your mind the thought or the image of perfect health, you will see that your state improves. The message of manifesting perfect health will be sent telepathically to the whole body, and all the little fighters and active workers will receive a current of inspiration, which will stimulate them to work for your benefit. In the same way, he who says, "I am sure that the competition will ruin my business," suggests to himself his own failure. All his actions will tend, unconsciously towards that end, and time will inevitably see the ruin of his business. But the man who in similar circumstances resolutely declares, "No competition can or will affect my business, and I will make my goods or my service so good, that all my customers will, for their own convenience, want to continue to deal with me." This man will be inspired by his own suggestion, will set to work, and will make his services so indispensable to the public, that his business will be more successful than ever. We see, then, that thoughts affect our lives, and that by simply controlling our thoughts we can direct our actions, and with them we will change the course of life, and even our environment. The philosophy of right thinking goes much deeper into this question than all that has been said. It teaches that thoughts held in the mind attract, by the law of vibration, the material for their objective expression, that whatever is present in the mind, with fine clarity of thought and inner vision, manifests in life, and that each mode of thought produces fruits of its own kind. It teaches that if there is confusion of thought in the mind, confusion and disharmony is experienced, in life and in circumstances, and that according to the thought and mental vision, life is either spoiled or glorified. The practice of right thinking further exercises the mind, so that we think only of that which harmonizes with the immutable laws which direct the universe, and thus produce in life the greatest good, the true bliss, the only satisfactory success, the greatest achievement. The most important message that we try to convey in this book is that the man who devotes a short time each day to develop the inner mental and spiritual realm, will eliminate evil from his life and replace it with good. That is, by meditating on the divine perfection, he will be transformed into his likeness. By doing so, he will also destroy the influence of what he calls bad luck and misfortune in his life, and replace it with manifest and harmonious good. His misfortunes will vanish and he will be filled with deep joy, the origin of which is internal, and which does not depend on external circumstances. He will be able to protect himself and also others from dangers, difficulties and disasters. These are not uncertain theories, but immutable laws that can never fail or alter. This is true prayer. This is not done by the power of the will, it is done by bringing oneself into harmony with the infinite. True success in life can only be found through this harmony with the divine. Man is a spiritual being. As soon as he realizes his own spiritual nature, and learns to draw to himself the powers of the infinite, working in union with his divine source, his life changes. Day by day he destroys a little evil from his life, and day by day a little good takes the place of evil. The results are not noticeable at first, but they are cumulative, and in time they will manifest as surely as the sun rises and sets each day. Many exclaim, "What is this evil influence that pursues me? As soon as prosperity smiles on me a little, I suffer a great loss. When I make plans for a happy life, I am surprised by disaster and it dashes all my hopes to the ground. There is nothing wrong that haunts you, what there is that you suffer absence of good, due to disharmony in your thinking and in your life. Therefore, as soon as disharmony gives way to unity, the transformation of life will begin. Moreover, while every system of true thought control educates the student in the most important aspects, simultaneously, changes of lesser importance are effected in him, which contribute to the success and stability of life. Willpower, concentration, determination, perseverance, creative imagination, directed thinking, natural memory, appreciation of beauty, self-confidence, good humor and optimism are developed without the student himself being aware of it. We mention these qualities, because they are of manifest value to the student, though they may seem insignificant, compared with the greater objects attained by the practice of truth. Right thinking impresses accuracy and precision upon life. It makes it certain and sure. It subjects everything to a regime which, if faithfully followed, gives results of mathematical certainty. We do not mean by this that it is wise to decide for oneself what kind of good one should receive in one's life, for in many cases it is better to leave this decision to the divine mind. But the certainty and accuracy lies in the fact that by working steadily, persistently and daily, to gain control of thought and to bring oneself into harmony with the infinite mind, the one source of all and from which all proceeds, one can each day remove some evil from one's life, and each day add something good, which inevitably gradually transforms life, edifies and beautifies it. At first the old sorrows and evils persist, some even seem to get worse, but after a while one notices that the attacks are less severe, the sorrows less acute, and thereafter one feels a gradual and persistent improvement, until the whole life and circumstances are completely transformed. Happiness. Happiness is an intimate state of mind, and cannot be found in external things. The idea, widely spread among the unthinking masses, that happiness is obtained from material possessions, wealth, pleasure and luxury, is not shared by those who possess such goods. The supposed happiness, which the unthinking believe can be obtained from wealth, and all that it can give us, consists merely in the brightly colored fripperies which attract men, towards which they stretch their greedy hands, but which always elude them. Henry Victor Morgan wrote in a moment of exaltation, "Today, from the heights where I stand above the sea of thought, I behold the frills, for which men strive on the changing surface. I see how from eager hands, they escape and remain unapproachable here and there, as the years pass they float on the limpid surface, and ever ardent hands reach out eagerly to the illusions of life, till weary, they sink and others more eagerly rise." Happiness, therefore, is not obtained by going after the illusions of life, but by looking within oneself, where the only true reality is to be found. Man is a spiritual being here and now, and his unhappiness lies in not appreciating this great fact. Man is always discontented, until he realizes that he is a spiritual being, endowed with divine powers, that he, as a spirit, is one with the great Father of all spirits, the infinite Spirit, the source of all things. When he comes to understand this stupendous fact, the heavy burden of anxiety that has oppressed him, the sense of loneliness and helplessness, the uncertainty and vagueness of life, vanish, and then he realizes for the first time, the true inner meaning of happiness. Happiness does not depend on circumstances. Those who do not know this say, "If my circumstances were better, I would be happy." However, even if circumstances changed, they would still be unhappy. Circumstances are not the cause of unhappiness, but the effect of the same cause mentioned above, lack of adjustment, inner spiritual disharmony. The inner change that will cure our unhappiness will make the unhappy circumstances disappear as well, for as soon as the lesson is learned and the necessary inner readjustment is made, the mission of the circumstances will be over. To wait for painful experiences to end in order to be happy is useless. The only way is to look for the cause of the disturbance within, and to make the necessary readjustment with life and the universe. Whoever is unhappy, is in disharmony with the eternal will and the divine plan, and unpleasant circumstances are not only the result of a wrong mental attitude, but are also intended to warn us of the cause, so that we readjust life accordingly. Happiness comes from within, from putting oneself in harmony with the divine will and purposes. Let it not be believed for an instant that the divine purpose is that our life should be dark, unhappy, painful, and lacking in necessary well-being. It may seem unattractive, but this is a mere illusion, for it leads to unspeakable bliss and indescribable happiness. On the other hand, there can be no happiness without service. To lead a selfish and self-centered life is the road to disintegration and death. It is the sure road to unhappiness, discontent, and despair. Service to the whole, to life, to God, to humanity, to the universe, is the path to inner harmony and fulfillment. No one who is self-centered can be happy, for he is not in harmony with the divine idea, nor can one who goes about his daily work unwillingly enjoy peace. But he who works for the all, and makes of his daily labor a sweet offering of love of life and humility, penetrates into the divine harmony. He knows what true happiness is. In the same way, to be happy one must be able to exercise thought control. It is clear that if happiness is an inner state of mind, thought has much to do with it. Those who cannot control their thoughts, allow themselves to be dominated by fear and worry, by hatred and anger, and depression and melancholy. When such is the case, there is no happiness possible. He who does not know the art of thought control, is affected negatively by circumstances, by the setbacks and difficult trials of life, but he who is able to control his thoughts, is not affected by these things, for he can ask his thoughts to harbor something negative, and instead, keep them fixed on the one positive reality of the universe, namely, the infinite spirit of good and perfection. In doing so, he loses all fear and unhappiness disappears, attains infinite peace and bliss. He leaves behind his weaknesses, and, infected by the divine power, lives a life of tranquility and triumph. Paraphrasing Henry Victor Morgan, he can exclaim, "On the heights where I am today, where the winds of God whistle lullingly, I no longer pursue the colorful illusions, for which men let themselves die, because I have entered the heart of the divine, and now I am the arbiter of my destiny." For the uninitiated, life is so material, that it is difficult for him to believe that behind the visible universe, there is a transcendental world of spirit, which is a perfect reality, and of which the objective world is but an expression. However, it is so. The visible world, with all its beauty, however disturbed by human disharmonies, is but an effect or an expression of the infinite reality. The metaphysicians who assert that matter, and the material world does not exist, are on the ground that, in a philosophical sense, only that which is permanent and immutable can be said to exist. However, as far as our consciousness is concerned, the visible does exist. If I have a tumor the size of my fist on my neck, for my consciousness the tumor exists. It exists in my consciousness for a while and I cannot ignore it completely. On the other hand, we have the abstract reasoners, who affirm that nothing material has existence, and on the other hand we have the materialists, who cannot believe in anything that is not material. The truth lies between these two extremes. There are two halves to the whole. There is the permanent invisible reality, and there is the changing expression of this reality. There is the divine idea, and there is the unfolding of this perfect idea, through the endless change and evolution of material form. Matter is a vehicle of God's expression. He clothes his idea with form and color. This is the garment of spirit. To dispense with either the material or the spiritual is to deceive ourselves, both together form the whole. In both cases we do without God, for God is the creator of his universe, which he has formed from his spiritual substance. God's thought finds expression in his creation, and therefore, to deny matter and call it evil, is to deny God and call him evil. Note that God is transcendent and immanent. In one sense God expresses himself in his universe, although in another sense he does not, for he transcends it. Therefore, matter and the material universe are the ever-changing, ever-evolving, and ever-developing effects of a more perfect divine idea. The tremendous power acting through the universe is spiritual, it is the divine mind in motion. That power is infinite, its object is to express on this material plane, a perfect manifestation of the divine idea. Its object is not to manifest disease, discomfort, unhappiness, poverty, sin, on the contrary, it seeks always to express itself in perfect health and harmony. That there is misery, disorder, hardship and other evils in the world only proves that man is in disharmony with his divine source. Instead of allowing the divine vital forces to flow freely and thus manifest good, they are diverted and made to produce evil. The secret of all healing and true achievement is to remove the barriers that divert the spiritual forces, thus opening life to divine influence. This power is infinite, it flows in constant stream, from the invisible spiritual source into the material universe. We see it manifested in myriads of forms, for God is immanent in all portions of his universe. We can look into the patient eyes of our dumb animal friends, and see him in them. We can gaze in rapt contemplation at the song of a simple flower, or the crimson grandeur of a sunset, and perceive the beauty of his character. God is everywhere and in everything. To know this is to enter into a new life of fullness and bliss. We see the infinite power manifested in all the wonders of the universe, in the evolution of worlds and systems of worlds, in the immense power of nature, in life repeating itself through the ages. In man, God enters into a new relationship with his creation. In man there are the possibilities of a wider and deeper consciousness. Man is at the summit of creation, all the kingdoms unite to create him, the mineral, the vegetable, the animal, serve him and recognize him as Lord of creation. Man's feet tread the earth, but his head rises to the heavens, he possesses in himself, though still in a latent state, the possibilities of divinity. He alone, in all creation, can think with God, commune with him, immerse himself in his consciousness and become, in time, one with the infinite. Man, being what he is, can use the infinite power in a special way. He can, through the divine power of his mind and thought, consciously identify himself with the infinite, and derive unlimited power from its divine source. There is no height that man cannot climb, provided he keeps his face to the light, and turns to the unquenchable sources of God. All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth, Jesus said. As for us, his weaker brethren, the same glorious fact is true. Man has thought of himself as a worm, but this is true only of his false finite personality. In reality, he is called to be king and priest in God. Man thinks he is a creature of the moment, he gropes in the dust of material concepts, while above him is the glorious crown of divine life, of which he is heir. He languishes in weakness when, on the contrary, he should be animated by infinite power. The power is infinite, it is in each one of us, as well as in all men. Very few know this power, and still fewer know how it is used. Most would be greatly surprised, if not shocked, if they were told that within them lie latent infinite and divine powers. That within each of them is a spark of divine fire, an inherent perfection waiting patiently to be given expression. Yet, as it is, the power within is infinite, it is God, it can revolutionize our life, simply by making us aware of his presence, and giving it freedom of expression. The power is the same as in the time of miracles, the law does not change. Those who readjust their lives, in such a way as to bring them into harmony with the law, heal in a divine way, express more and more infinite perfection, not only in their body, but also in their character. The power is the same, no matter how it is used. It may be employed to strengthen the body, to empower the mind, or to attain in life our highest ideal. No one who has recourse to the infinite power can ever fail, his life reflects the infinite achievement of God. True prosperity. The most effective prosperity is not the accumulation of great wealth. To be truly prosperous is to have enough, to be able to live without scarcity or hardship, and yet to be free from the sad burden of wealth. The truly wise man is he who is content with enough, but without excess. Scarcity is annoying, but the possession of wealth imposes burdens and responsibilities, which are not worth the trouble. Some of my readers will raise the moral question, whether it is right to enjoy even a comfortable position, while many are beset by want. Of course, it is a question that everyone must resolve for himself. Personally, we believe that it is justified to accept from life enough material goods, to be able to develop on all levels, physical, mental, and spiritual. Therefore, everyone deserves to receive everything he needs for his own higher development, as long as he is willing to give in return his best services to humanity and the world. He who renders his best services, his best thoughts, his best emotions to life, to the world and to his fellow men, is entitled to an adequate reward, in the best that life can give him. He who thinks himself skillful, and by subtle contrivances tries to cheat life, and his fellow men, by taking much and giving little or nothing in return, is not really skillful, but only simple, for what he gains in one way he loses in another. He may gain money, it is true, though he loses all that is best and most satisfactory in life, but which money cannot buy. The way of true prosperity is that of the highest service, the modified inner mental tonic, and the understanding of truth through right thinking. This brings us into harmony with the divine law of give and receive, while it removes the mental cause of scarcity and poverty, provides in life a prudent opulence, neither excess nor scarcity, besides the sure knowledge that we can never lack anything worth possessing. Those who do not understand the action of the law always fear poverty. They may be rich, but in their innermost being they are gnawed by an obsessive fear of losing everything and finding themselves destitute. They are so afraid of the future and what it may bring, that they need to accumulate money, something to count on when things go wrong. Not satisfied with what they already have, they anxiously pursue greater riches, with no other desire than to feel more secure. This is the cult of mammon. They are after the flesh and not after the spirit. As long as we consider money and material goods, in themselves as our source of provision, as long as we think that such things free us from need, we serve mammon and, therefore, we cannot serve God. We are after the flesh and not after the spirit. He who recognizes that God, universal mind and spirit, if this expression be preferred, is the one source of all provision, and recognizes daily and hourly his oneness with this infinite source, can never lack anything that is good. What he should be concerned with, is to render the best and most effective service to life, in exchange for the abundance he receives. He who is not yet able to perceive the generosity of God in his life, must act, as far as service and gratitude are concerned, as if such generosity had been manifested. It will surely come sooner or later, that is, if thoughts of God's abundance, as reality, are transmuted behind the scarcity and poverty of unreality. This is true prosperity, true opulence. One should not believe, however, that one should wait quietly for the best things to fall from the clouds. It is necessary, first of all, to be active mentally and spiritually, in the inner world of thought and, at the same time, to work physically. Life is first and foremost action, therefore, to deserve prosperity you must work. Work, when it is well loved, is one of the greatest joys of life. No one can be happy or in good health unless he is fully engaged in work. But not to do it merely to satisfy his own selfish ends, but it must be work done as an offering of love, to life and to the world. It is not intended to imply that righteous thought will suddenly turn a poor person into a rich one, nor is it intended to be presented as a means to get rich quickly. What it does do is teach the practitioner how not to attract poverty into his life, and sets him on the path that, if he follows this methodology, will lead him to comfortable sufficiency. It teaches him how to stop the negative habits of thought, and the negative mental attitude that, by virtue of their vibrations, retard success. It teaches you how to bring yourself into harmony with the immutable law, and thus bring yourself under the law of attraction. It teaches you how to use your mind, to gradually eliminate evil and poverty from your life, replacing them with good, prosperity and peace. This repeated several times each day will have a cumulative effect on your life, and over time will become evident and increase from year to year. Some of my idealistic readers may say that, if they take more than a mere portion, they will take more than their fair share, and thus rob the poor. In a purely material sense, this may be true. However, it is far from reality. Our source of provision is spiritual and not material. God is not grieved or burdened by poverty. He is infinite abundance. As God's creatures, all of God's abundance is ours, not for selfish enjoyment, but for the use and service of all. The conditions of our life are the outward expression of our thoughts and of our mental attitude. If our thoughts revolve constantly around an idea of need and limitation, these are the conditions which manifest themselves in our external life, for it reflects the life of our thought. Our external life is largely composed of our thoughts clothed in material form. It is not reality. Reality is perfect. Our lives are imagined in the mind of God as perfect. But with our erroneous thinking and false beliefs, we hide the truth from ourselves, and thus manifest imperfection instead of perfection. Perfection, however, remains the only reality, and all imperfection is caused by the materialization of our thoughts, which hide truth from us. Our life has always been imagined in divine mind as perfect, even before the beginning of time. All our needs are abundantly supplied, and always will be, even after time has ceased to exist. The object of our teaching is to attract those who are ready for the known degree of understanding. In this degree truth is comprehended by the soul, the kingdom is found, after which all these things will be added unto you. The practical application of the teachings of Jesus is the only way to solve the problem of provision, once for all and forever. When we finally find the kingdom, we discover that all our needs and demands are met precisely at the right time, according to our faith or understanding. Look where you will, and you will find no sign of poverty in the divine idea. Wherever we look, we see prodigal abundance and ample profusion. Thousands of acorns to form a single oak, and enough energy devoted to flowers alone, to envelop every child of man in material abundance. God is not weighed down by poverty, and those who bring themselves into harmony with the divine idea, can never lack anything. Some of us may consider ourselves defeated in the selfish struggle for material existence. The selfish and cruel may push us aside, may trample us underfoot, and take away what we would have wanted for ourselves, and for our dear and loved ones. Perhaps we feel that we cannot fight with the rude, selfish and greedy individuals, who grab the spoils without regard for those they harm. Perhaps we consider ourselves as sheep among wolves. This is very true, for spiritually minded people are different from the worldly, and generally lose if they adopt worldly methods. Even if they win, they can only keep what they have gained with great effort and energy. Others are against them, and they have to endure many hardships, and experience friction continuously. Moreover, they have the fear of falling off the wagon at any moment. By falling off the wagon I mean finding themselves in want and destitution. I take this simile from Looking Backwards, a book that was very fashionable. A book that was very fashionable about 40 years ago. The author compared the competitive life of the time, with a car that had to be pushed or pulled, by a number of individuals who worked, struggled and contended, while a fortunate few, traveled comfortably and even luxuriously inside. Those inside enjoyed a pleasant time. But unfortunately the seats were not very safe, so that from time to time, when the car lurched, some fell onto the road, where they were instantly forced to help drag and pull the heavy car. This is the fear that corrodes the heart of all those who earn money fighting and competing. It is a case of every man for himself, and whoever is left behind, may the devil take him. Now, the true and spiritual way to work, is to seek the prosperity that comes from the infinite, or what the Old Testament would call the blessing of the Lord. When God, or Spirit blesses us, or when we are in harmony with spiritual law, prosperity comes to us without terrible effort, gently as a pleasant and beneficent rain, and without giving place to any pain. Contrary to the prosperity of the materialists, it does not produce misfortunes or disappointments, but brings harmony and peace. God wants us to live happy, free, healthy and joyful lives, and if we obey His laws, He adds His blessing in the form of prosperity, which does not produce worries or pains, but only increases harmony and bliss. For the best understanding of what has been said, let us note that this is totally different from the methods of occult work, which many will have read in the books of the New Thought. Visualizing what one wants, and forcing it to materialize so that it appears, is black magic in an attenuated form. It is not the spiritual way of working, rather it could be described as diabolical. Apparently it may work, but wealth obtained in such a hidden way, always carries with it a curse. It not only destroys our happiness, but also attracts terrible things. In the end, ill-gotten wealth takes wings and flies away. Health and healing. Health is a natural right of every son of man. If we are sick, if we feel ill or suffer from chronic ill health, it is because we are in disharmony with the divine plan or idea. The robust animal health of our ancestors has disappeared. Man is now more sensitive, more mental, more spiritual and, consequently, is more and more dependent on mental and spiritual forces for his life and health. We are all becoming more nervous and highly receptive, more imaginative, more sensitive to the power of thought, and to other spiritual and psychic forces. Therefore, man has to rely more and more on the one source of life, to preserve his health, energy and vitality. Right thinking brings a message of health. It asserts that the mysterious thing we call life is a manifestation of God, and that only by returning to the first cause, the one source of all life, by ordering our lives in harmony with the spiritual laws, and by consciously identifying ourselves with the infinite power, can we attain true and complete healing. Once this is done, disease and bad healing cease, not to reappear in another form, but disappear from life forever. But do not think that health is simply the absence of disease, for it is much more than that. To be well implies the possession of flexibility of spirit, of tremendous energy, or at least, sufficient for all needs. It means feeling active and willing, as well as brimming with joy, both at work and at play. In such conditions, one is in accord with the whole universe, and is one with the source of all life and infinite good, and hence one can exclaim with the poet, "I live in eternal joy, to me all is divine. I feed on heavenly manna, and quench my thirst with heavenly wine." To him who has attained perfect health by spiritual means, all things are indeed divine. Every blade of grass, every flower bud, the swaying of the trees, the rustle of the breeze, all speak peace to his soul, and fill his heart with ecstasy and infinite satisfaction. Not only can man, by bringing himself into harmony with the divine source, become healthy himself, but he can also help others to attain better health. We do not claim that everyone possesses the necessary qualities to become an efficient spiritual healer, but everyone who finds health for himself can also teach others to find it. Absolute certainty. There is no chance or luck in the universe, everything obeys an infallible law. The ancient idea of propitiating a wrathful deity is based on ignorance of the divine law. Fortunately for us there is no mediation or favor, everything is fulfilled according to the immutable law and absolute justice. There is neither divine wrath nor divine favoritism, but eternal justice reigns. We cannot flatter the divinity, we have to fend for ourselves, and what we sow we shall also reap. It is a fortune for us, that the universe is governed by a universal law, and an infinite justice. This law or principle never alters, never fails, never ceases to act. We, therefore, have but to work in harmony with the divine law, to obtain absolutely certain results. As long as man ignores the law and acts contrary to it, his life will be full of evil, discord, and what is called bad luck. There will be no certainty of anything, Sometimes things will go well, and he will say he is lucky, but then there will be misfortunes and disasters without knowing how, and he will say he is unlucky. But as soon as man learns to know the law, and to act in harmony with it, he begins to get accurate results. He may not be able to say what exact form they will take, but he will know with absolute certainty that good will manifest in his life, as a result of something acting in the invisible realm of mind and thought, and as a result of right decisions, and right conduct. He may not know when it will manifest, but he knows with certainty that it will manifest. A man may have suffered from a physical weakness or ailment for a quarter of a century, and after innumerable consultations with expert specialists, and all kinds of treatment by doctors and healers, he has obtained no relief. However, as soon as you bring your mind and your life into harmony with the divine, and work daily mentally in accordance with certain laws, you may be fully assured that your ailment will be cured every day to some extent. It may be an infinitesimal amount, but you have initiated constructive action in the right direction, and its effects are cumulative and will eventually be felt. The same is true of our circumstances and our environment. We can bring ourselves into harmony with the infinite and, working daily in the inner world of cause, produce in the outer life better circumstances, and a more harmonious environment. To the extent that we obey the law, and work constructively in the invisible, to the same extent will the effects accumulate, until at last they manifest in the outer life. The results must come, the law always responds, the power never fails to act, and God is never wrong. No matter how negative a person may be, no matter how unfortunate he may have been, no matter how much he may be dominated by disease, or by the habit of ill health, if such a person perseveres and works according to the law, and persists and is constant, in spite of the lack of visible results at first, he will surely overcome, he can never fail. We know now, although we have not always known it, that a well-directed prayer cannot fail to produce an effect. The results are always produced with mathematical exactitude. There is no human element in the law, it is absolute, it is perfect, it is exact. If our prayer is as it should be and we act accordingly, only good can bring us. It may not always come according to our human ideas, but it will always be the best possible good for us, according to infinite wisdom. Destiny. On high again, I find myself where the winds of God sing their lullaby. I no longer try to catch the glimmer of illusions, for which men die, for I have ascended to the heart of God, and am the arbiter of my destiny. Henry Victor Morgan. What do we understand by destiny? The simplest definition is, events, or the causes of such events, over which we have no control. The better we understand the power and effect of our thinking, the less we find in our lives that escapes our control. However, there are things that seem completely inescapable, for example, our parents, date and place of birth, country of origin, death of relatives, and other important life events. But what man or woman who has reached the meridian of life, has not gone through experiences, which have challenged all the powers of his or her mind, body and soul, all his or her wealth or means, the help of friends and even ardent prayer or agonizing supplication? Most of us have to recognize that life is too big for us to master, and that there are events or happenings, which are beyond our power to control. There are those who go even further. There are educated people who say that nothing happens, but that we simply face things. They say that life is like a train journey, for example, from London to Edinburgh. The argument is that when we start the journey, Edinburgh and everything in between already exists, and the reason we don't see it until we arrive on the train, is simply due to limited sight, etc. Likewise, it can be argued that all the events of life already exist, but we only experience them, when life pushes us to face them one by one. The fact that we cannot see the end from the beginning, is due to the limitations of consciousness. Then there are the connoisseurs and practitioners, of the so-called occult sciences. We do not know much about these things, nor are we mostly interested in them, but we know enough, to try to find out to what extent, one can give credence to the claims of such people. Although skeptical, we have had to admit that to some extent, their calculations and deductions are correct. Although we are of the opinion that astrology and the occult sciences are best left aside, we have, nevertheless, come to the conclusion that good astrologers can roughly predict what a man's life will be. In some cases, it is only applicable to the man who consents to be the plaything of fate, creature of impulses and victim of circumstances. But as soon as man begins to employ his inner powers, astrologers are mistaken, for such an individual no longer follows his horoscope, but he himself traces the line of his destiny. The moment a man turns to God for help and raises his thoughts to heaven, he rises above the influences and impulses which would otherwise cause him to fall into grave errors and misfortunes. When a man resists a temptation, with the strength of the Spirit, raising his thoughts to God, he breaks the bonds that hold him, that is to say, he frees himself from the life mapped out beforehand and delineated in the horoscope. Whenever we control our thoughts, refuse to let them follow a certain direction, and force them to flow in a higher one, we free ourselves from our bonds. In other words, we master our destiny. Forgive us for having mentioned astrology, we have done so simply to illustrate our point of view. According to it, what we call destiny only concerns the natural man, and is broken when we employ our inner powers, raise our thoughts towards heaven, and aspire to higher and better things. The life of the awakened man cannot be predicted. He becomes a liberated or redeemed soul. He is freed from the law of sin and death, and discovers a new path of victory and overcoming. To paraphrase Henry Victor Morgan, then he contemplates the heart of God, and becomes the arbiter of his destiny. Self-confidence. The lack of self-confidence is the cause of the failure of many. They have ability, they are ambitious, they have ideas, but they lack sufficient confidence and faith in their own powers and abilities to succeed. Confidence and faith are the priceless possession of all successful people. Every successful person is distinguished by the splendid confidence he has in himself, and whoever lacks this spiritual quality, because it is a spiritual quality, can never win. We have never met a successful person who did not believe totally and absolutely in himself, neither have we met a failed person who did not lack this quality. Right thinking develops self-confidence in the sense that it destroys terror. What would some people not give to be free from terror and distrust? However, it can be achieved and the process is not difficult. But what is far more important is for the seeker to discover the wonders of his own inner spiritual and mental forces, and to exercise and apply them gradually. When the student discovers that he has unlimited powers at his disposal, that he can draw upon inexhaustible resources, there arises in his mind confidence, certainty, and absolute faith in those inner powers. The student, instead of asking, "Will I be able to do it?" and believing in what he says, he does so with confidence in the inner powers to do it, and that power never fails. The successful man by nature believes in himself, and that is why he succeeds. The exercised student believes in the unlimited powers of the universal mind, which he can, using his own mental power, dispose of and apply whenever he needs them. Moreover, as he knows and understands the law, he is forewarned not to commit in life the mistakes to which those who have less knowledge than himself are prone. Therefore, the knowledge of truth not only dispels fear and creates self-confidence and faith in the inner mental and spiritual forces, but also makes us partakers of the knowledge and wisdom by which life may be directed to lasting and abundant success. When man realizes his oneness with the infinite, he fears nothing, and he will never lack confidence. He knows that all divine forces are his, they seek to obey his will and serve him. Though his feet are still on earth, his mind is in God, and his heart beats with a feeling of universal and unlimited power. Peace. The philosophy of right thinking is practical. One of its most valuable teachings is that there is a higher mental realm, to which, with a little practice, we can ascend. It is accessible to anyone who wants to persevere. With practice we can withdraw to this higher realm, and look down, so to speak, and observe with detachment the turmoil and fever of life. On this higher plane of consciousness, one is completely free from all anxiety, restlessness, worry, contrariness, terror, anguish, from all that tends to overshadow life, and disturb the mind. From such a height one sees all the ambitions, quarrels and selfishness of material life, in their true proportions. One sees things in the light of eternity, from the universal point of view, and this purifies the mind of all anxiety and restlessness, and enables one to penetrate into perfect peace. Whoever has not exercised and, after reading these lines, attempts to enter this higher mental realm, will find it impossible. This is because he does not yet have control over his thought, and does not know how to use the mind. Only by thought control and concentration can one expel from his mind all thoughts of worry and anxiety, and enter the realm of perfect peace and calm. However, we must keep in mind that, in addition to thought control, it is necessary to readjust one's life in harmony with the laws that govern the universe. Students are taught how to discard fear, and adopt a mental attitude toward life, which is in harmony with the purpose of the divine plan. When the proper mental attitude is achieved, the student comes into harmony with the object and purpose of life. He enters into union with God, he thinks with God, he immerses himself in the divine consciousness, he dwells constantly in the peace of the infinite. Character and self-mastery. The great objective of this life is the formation of character. This life is an opportunity given to us to develop our character in certain directions. For example, a person will have to overcome fear and worry, and develop confidence. All the experiences of that person's life will give him the opportunity to combat that weakness. Another person will have to overcome greed and selfishness, and will also have the opportunity to fight against his weakness, but whatever the weakness is, it must be overcome. If we let our life go by without overcoming our weaknesses, we are on the wrong track, for we will have frustrated the true purpose of life. Whatever the weakness or weaknesses are, they must be overcome. Every true mental system teaches methods of overcoming weaknesses. Such methods, though not a broad road to quick and easy conquest, for there is no such road, are, nevertheless, a great help on the way to victory and success. He who has not yet discovered his inner spiritual powers, tries to conquer by the power of will alone. This is a painful and unprofitable method, besides being extremely exhausting. The will should never be utilized in this way. Instead, the inner spiritual power, directed by the will, should be employed. Only by this means can the final victory be achieved. All weaknesses and habits can be subdued by the conscious use of this inner power, but not without effort. It is a struggle between what may be called the higher soul and the animal soul, the higher and the lower. It is a battle that will one day be won. He is wise who chooses to win it now. Self-mastery is only possible through control of thought, for all action is the result of thought. He who is unable to control his thoughts will never be able to master himself. Of necessity he must be a slave to his emotions and passions, and he will fall a prey to every hostile influence he can find. Those who are subject to the tyranny of habit, and cannot break the chains that hold them, who remain captive in spite of frightful struggles and anxieties, might be set free, might experience the inner joy of victory, and of their own inner mastery, if only they would comprehend the divine power, and learn the way to control their thoughts. The same is true of every weakness of character. No matter what the weakness, it can be mastered by patient effort, by the application of infinite power, by control of the mind and by concentrated, constructive and harmonious thought. In each of us, there is latent a spark of divine perfection. The major purpose of this life is to give expression to the divine. We can only do this to the extent that we form our character, master habits, and learn self-mastery. Inspiration, intuition, originality, and the use of the inner mind. The ordinary mind of the senses learns from objective experiences, from the testimony of the senses, often erroneous, from books, from the experience of others. It possesses no inspiration, originality, or genius. All inspiration comes from within. In each of us dwell the divine forces, but latent and unexpressed. Inspiration is one of them. Whoever practices daily what is called entering into the secret place of the Most High, attains inspiration or direct knowledge. He who receives inspiration in this form is not a spiritualist, for all men of great attainments have received their call to service by inner inspiration. Emerson used to go into the forest to listen to the voice of the forest. The great inventors have had luminous ideas, but such ideas do not come from without, but from within. Within us, there are also the powers of intuition or direct knowledge, which we can develop and use, for our own guidance, and for the blessing of others. It takes time and patience to develop these powers, but when they are attained, one is in touch with the deep wisdom of God. In the same way, all originality arises from within. The superficial mind can only copy the work of others, and deduce by reasoning from known facts. True originality comes from our inner God. He who initiates a new line of endeavor, or who brings a new idea to man, does so because he is divinely guided and instructed. Each one of us is, though we may not know it, an instrument which the divine mind uses, to enlighten and guide men. By looking into our divine center, we learn to think constructively and creatively, we enter into communion with God, and become creators with Him. He who learns to use his inner mind, will be of great help on the path of life. For by posing the problem to his inner mind, he will find a solution to every difficulty. It is said of Abraham Lincoln, a true giant among men, that when he was faced with a difficult problem, he would take it out of his conscious mind and think of other things. After a while, he would think about the matter again and find the answer, solved by his inner mind. Many businessmen, when they find themselves perplexed by a difficulty, for which there is apparently no solution, do not make a decision until they have slept on it. They unconsciously let their inner mind solve the problem while they sleep. He who lives a pure and good life and aspires to God, seeking only the noblest and the best, if he uses his inner mind, will be led to the highest good, and will learn to express the divinity that dwells within him, in the most effective service to his fellow men. Success. Success can only be achieved through spiritual power. He who cannot achieve success, shows that he is ignorant of how to use his inner, mental, and spiritual powers. Professor W. Pollard, historian, writing on the spiritual foundations of civilization, says, "There is no antagonism between the spiritual and the material. Far from being in opposition, all the material cokes, good for man, have been discovered and made attainable, by the use of his spiritual powers. Moreover, so long as he lives in this world, all his spiritual powers depend for their exercise, on his body being provided with air, food and drink. Economic advantages are real assets of great importance, but they are so important, because they tend to fall largely, into the hands of spiritually vigorous races, with energy and ability to make the best use of them. In this age, we have greater need than ever in all our history, of secular spiritual gifts, without which civilization cannot remain stable. We need powers of direction, organization, foresight, imagination, initiative in every degree. The gifts are there. God has poured them out in abundance upon the human race. There is a spiritual power which contributes not only to success, but also to righteousness, and which demands righteousness as a condition of lasting success. Success, therefore, depends upon spiritual power. Truly lasting success is only achieved when it is based upon righteousness, that is, probity, honesty, fair dealing, justice and compassion towards others. Any success that is based on cunning, mastery of mind, coercion, hypnotism, unscrupulousness, injustice and rudeness towards others, carries within itself the germ of its own decay. The good. To know and understand that through life and the universe runs a principle of infinite good, is the first step towards happiness and success. To know that by conscious identification with the spirit of infinite good, one attracts to one's life and body nothing but infinite good, is to take the first step toward a life of power and achievement. God is the infinite good, the power of God and the life of God are do-gooders, there is no evil in the divine plan. When we contemplate a simple flower by the roadside, our soul realizes that there is no evil in God, that there is only infinite good. Man possesses the divine power of thought. Thought is mind in action, it is a spiritual power, superior to any material power. Abusing this power, man diverts the beneficent forces of life into wrong channels, and thus produces what we call evil. The tavern, the battlefield, or the suicide are examples of the effects of wrong thinking. The power of evil is the collective effect of wrong thinking. If all men would think rightly and lovingly, war and other disharmonies would cease in all areas of the earth. Our divine elder brother taught us to think harmoniously and with love, but, unfortunately, men have disregarded his teaching, and thus we have witnessed the rare anomaly of so-called Christian nations fighting against each other, with all imaginable cruelty. The power and energy flowing from providence can be directed by our thoughts into good or evil channels. If with our right thinking, we direct it into good channels, it produces harmony, peace, happiness, abundance and joy. Everything that comes from God is good, and the good is supreme. Is there any other God than the one God? Is there any other creator than the one creator? Is there any other omnipotent than the infinite? The one verse answers, no. Therefore, whoever turns his face towards God, need not fear that there is any power, or evil, that stands between him and his divine source. Something will tug at his sleeve, voices will murmur in his ears, but nothing will be able to wrest him from the hands of his Father. He who turns to God, and learns to think in harmony with him, need not fear evil, his life will be a manifestation of the infinite good. Man's wrong thinking turns the beneficial forces of life into discomfort, disease, poverty, misery and all kinds of disharmony, but by thinking with God, instead of against him, man can manifest health, abundance and the highest realization, he can attain peace, he can live a life of triumph and indescribable joy. The spiritual path is not incompatible with material progress. The path of realization is the path that the soul travels, in its ascent from lower to higher things. It is not an easy path, but it leads to the perfect day. It should not be inferred from this that to enter this path, and ascend the steep slope to God, means that the outward life of the one who follows it, must be poor or unsuccessful. The truth is that the outer life must reflect the progress of the fuller inner life. The one and the other must help each other, for in the inner life we learn the secrets of God's power, strength, the perfection of his character, and in our outer life, we must express such powers in the form of true success and relationship. What we achieve in life is of no importance in itself from a spiritual point of view, but the effect it exerts on our character, by virtue of the mastery of the difficulties it forces us to overcome, is an enduring benefit. For instance, the development of a great industry is of no value in itself, because it imposes care and responsibility, and things that can be bought with money, soon tire and cease to satisfy. But though an enterprise of this kind is of no value in itself, from the spiritual point of view, its effect upon the formation of character, is really very valuable. In the development of great enterprises, lofty qualities are exercised. He who creates a vast enterprise, who maintains it, is put to the test in every possible way. He has to exercise patience, courage, firmness, perseverance, persistence, faith, hope, self-control, forbearance, probity, insight, imagination, and other qualities, and the greater the difficulties, the more these qualities are developed. The business itself, and the income it produces, is of little importance, and in fact, it is a great burden and responsibility. Relatively speaking, the modest man who leads a simple life in his small house, lives in all material respects much better, but the effects on the formation of character are inestimable. These qualities, acquired by incessant struggle and the overcoming of difficulties, are permanent acquisitions of the soul, and by preserving them through the ages, become part of the true spiritual man. It is seen, then, that the outer world of realization offers us the opportunity of manifesting the divine powers, of developing the qualities of character which demand the attainment and overcoming of difficulties. It is not for all men to become builders of great enterprises, nor are all called to be great lawyers, politicians, writers or artists, but it is possible for each of us to achieve success in the particular work we have come to do. Whatever our work in life is, we have the possibility, latent in us, to achieve success in that work. By doing our work, overcoming its difficulties, we form our character, and acquire qualities of mind and soul, which will last forever. Even if we cannot achieve what the world calls success, we can enjoy the satisfaction of doing our work better than it has been done before, or as well as it is possible to do it. It should be added that life is not what it seems. It is not governed solely by the rough procedures of men, on the contrary, it is governed by spiritual laws and powers. However cornered we may seem to be, however discouraging our prospects may be, in terms of advancement, progress, improvement of circumstances, environment, etc. There is nothing to prevent us from rising. There is nothing that can stop us from rising and improving, and no one can stop our progress, but ourselves. The reason is that life is spiritual, and is governed by internal laws. The law is that as soon as we are fit for advancement, we attain it, and that when we have risen above one position in life, another, more advanced and responsible one, opens before us. The history of man's progress and achievement is the history of his mental expansion. As soon as he has assimilated one series of experiences, and transcended one condition, other experiences, and a higher condition, open before him. Therefore, if our future looks bleak, it is only because we think so. What we really have to do, is to expand our mind, expand its boundaries, and think in a broader sense. When Whiteley and Lipton opened their small stores, they didn't think in terms of one store but many, not one small store but one big store. Had they thought in terms of small things, they would have remained small men all their lives. But while they rigidly abstained from everything superfluous and economized, their minds thought in terms of thousands. While their income was a few pounds a week, their minds saw millions. The expansion of their minds brought them the required opportunities. The same law applies to all walks of life, and to all aspects of activity. The individual has to grow and expand himself, before he can grow and expand in the realizations of life. This growth and expansion has its origin and source in thoughts. We must exercise our mind in thinking great thoughts, then adjust our actions, and adopt the discipline which all progress demands. The harmonious life. Harmonious living is possible only for those who think harmoniously. The outer life is a reflection of the larger inner life. If our outer life is disharmonious, it is because there are inner disharmonies, and these only disappear when inwardly we adhere to the motive of life, and to the purpose of the divine plan. All the disharmonies of life, its discords and harshness, have their origin within us and not outside. The sensory mind inclines us to seek the cause outside, but the inner teaching tells us to seek within. The simple man blames life or fate, his peers or God, and very often he feels very complaining and bitter about it. The more he looks for the cause outside himself, and the more he blames others, the worse his difficulties are, the more discordant his life becomes. The cause of discord is not in others or in external circumstances, it is not in destiny, it is not the vengeance of God. It is, on the contrary, lack of adjustment with the purpose of life, lack of unity with the cosmic whole, it is disharmony with the divine will and purpose. He who returns to his divine source, and harmonizes his inner life with the purpose that animates the whole cosmic plan, lives a life of harmony and peace. He lives in God, he thinks with God, he works with God, he harmonizes with divine harmony. His life expresses peace and love, it reflects the serene calm of the infinite. The things that infuriate and irritate the hearts of men do not affect him. He lives his life in a higher vibration. Full of love and sympathy, he helps others, and tries to lead them to higher things. By the harmony of his own life, he exerts a quiet influence upon the lives of others. He is like oil poured upon storm-tossed waters. He infuses peace and hope into troubled lives. Divine optimism. Pessimism is contrary to the divine idea. God is the eternal optimist, infinitely triumphant in all his undertakings. He has no thoughts of failure, despair, or doubt. God can never be anything but an optimist, for he knows that all is well. Likewise, he who thinks with God, who is in harmony with his will and purpose, who penetrates into the divine consciousness, knows that all is well. Who is imbued with this certain knowledge, according to which, although superficially things seem unreasonable, and irremediably bad up close, in reality all is well. In God's beautiful universe, there can never be a pessimist. The pessimist is he who sees only the dark side of things, and without understanding that they are transitory shadows, and that above is the eternal and perfect reality, sinks into darkness. The more he meditates on evil, the more he believes in it, the more he believes in it, the more evil he sees around him. Pessimism is the philosophy of despair. It undermines health, it prevents success, it strips life of all joy and brightness, it makes one a depressing influence on others. The pessimist is an enemy to himself, and a source of depression and disharmony to others. If the divine object of life is to arrive at a harmonious union with God, such as it is, before such a union can be realized, pessimism must be replaced by an optimistic attitude toward life, and by a habit of thought full of hope. No one who is a pessimist can recognize God, nor can anyone who knows God be a pessimist. He who knows God cannot but be an optimist, for he knows that all is well. A philosophy of truth induces optimism. It instills the firm belief that the Creator knows what he is doing in his universe and that, in an inner sense, all is good and all is well. It believes that, from the point of view of the Absolute, there is no power but the power of God, and that this is good. He affirms that man has but to bring himself into harmony with infinite love, and automatically, by the action of the immutable and infinitely just law, he will attain peace, happiness, abundance and health. He will receive all perfect good and mercy, not at some time or place in the future, but here and now. The greatest of all is charity. Charity or love is the key to all situations in life. By charity we mean the kind feeling, which desires only the good of the object of our charity or love. Cultivating thoughts of love, charity, goodwill, forgiveness, forbearance, compassion not only blesses and helps others, but brings happiness and harmony to our own life. In the Sermon on the Mount, we were told to agree with our adversary, to love our enemies, and to do good to those who treat us badly. This commandment is not a restriction, but an open door, through which we can pass to a richer, fuller, and freer life. If we obey this commandment or advice, our life will be filled with blessings, and our difficulties will be overcome in a wonderful way. If when we meet difficult people, we exercise ourselves in thoughts of goodwill towards them, and actively wish them every blessing, and all possible good, we will find that the difficulty has been overcome, and harmony reigns in its place. If when certain persons annoy us, we consent to be annoyed, and may judge and magnify their faults and slips, our annoyance increases, to the extent that we not only spoil our own life, but also make the life of the person, to whom we attribute the cause of our annoyance, more difficult. But if instead of letting ourselves be annoyed, we involve the person who annoys us, in thoughts of goodwill, and also wish him every blessing and every welfare, while trying to understand his point of view. We try to see things through their eyes, and appreciate their difficulties and setbacks, and if in addition to all this, we try to see the good in them, and the true divine nature, which in them tries to find expression, then the whole situation will become clear, and our displeasure will disappear. On the other hand, by doing this, we help the one who would otherwise annoy us, and this, of course, is the greatest good we can do in life, which is to help and bless others, and allow them to unfold and reveal the hidden splendor that is in them. If, for example, we are bothered by the barking of a dog, what we have to do is to awaken in us an active feeling of love towards the dog. Instead of resenting it, feel sympathy and compassion. The result will be that the barking will stop, or lose the power to annoy us. In the same way, when musicians or peddlers are annoying, think of them with love, instead of being irritated, and the annoyance will disappear. Whatever the situation and however difficult it may be, love is the key. Love, when applied in this way, fixes every situation, smooths every difficulty, and brings forth the divine readjustment. When Jesus said that we should love one another, he revealed to us the secret of how to make our life harmonious, beautiful, and happy. Many have tried to follow Jesus' teaching, simply as a command. They have tried to follow it, because they have believed that they had to try to follow it as a duty, if they wanted to be good Christians. Perhaps they have never understood that the counsel of Jesus is not a heavy and meaningless commandment, but is an open sesame for a life of joy and freedom, such as cannot be described. If they had known, perhaps they would have been more successful, for it is always easier to do a thing when you know its meaning, what it is for and where it leads to. On the other hand, many who have tried to follow the teaching have found it very difficult, because they have not realized or understood the power of thought, or the necessity of educating the mind in the art of right thinking. They have said, "But how can I love my enemies? I do not like them and will never like them, so how can I feel love towards them?" Let us note in passing, that it is not a question of liking or disliking our enemies, nor is it a question of feelings of affection. The love we are referring to is goodwill, compassion, pity, mercy, clemency, meekness, giving up oneself and the best of oneself, for the benefit of others. God so loved the world that he gave his beloved Son. This will be understood if we say, God had so much pity on the world, or God felt so much compassion for the world. But it is only in thought. What we want to emphasize in conclusion is that thought and mental control can be used as an aid to love our enemies. Our natural impulse is to resent what our enemies do to us, and to have thoughts of antagonism, self-justification, and criticism. In doing so, we increase the difficulties, and contribute to making things go from bad to worse. On the contrary, we can say, I will have thoughts of goodwill and compassion, and I will pray that you will be blessed in every possible way. If we are alone, we can express our thoughts, with precise and audible words, such as, so and so, mentioning the name of our enemy, I love you, I forgive you, as God loves and forgives me. I pray that you will be blessed in the best possible way, and that you will meet God and be filled with unspeakable bliss. It may be that when we begin to do this, we are a long way from feeling love. But the spoken word, which is a concrete thought, has power, and if we persevere day after day, we will gradually change, until we really come to love our enemy, and pray for his welfare, with the same fervor with which we pray for our nearest and dearest. When this point is reached, all situations are fixed.
Thank you for joining us on this inspiring adventure. Don't forget to subscribe for more transformative content, and share this audiobook with those seeking positive change in their lives. Until next time.